Community members' jaws dropped during tonight's presentation. The report was put together by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was hired by village trustees in April as an independent investigator. They sought her out to get to the bottom of Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard's alleged misuse of village funds.
The Village of Dalton financial results revealed in Lori Lightfoot's August 8th presentation was absolutely shocking. She provided details on reckless overtime approvals, erroneous credit card purchases, and most importantly, the financial state of emergency of the Village of Dalton due to Tiffany's reckless spending. So today, the saga continues, and this story deserves to be written and told. Welcome to Crime She Wrote. In today's video, I will be showing you the entire presentation from Lori Lightfoot and her assistant, and afterwards we will discuss it in crime mob style and go over some of the key points. So for those that have not seen this presentation, you are in for some jaw-dropping revelations. But before we do, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So let me just jump right into it. Many of you know that the village, in the same manner as other municipalities in the state, accounts for its finances using what's called fund accounting. That means, that's just a fancy word of saying the expenses and the revenues are divided up into specific buckets of dollars, and those funds are what we're going to be talking about. The village maintains three categories of fund: a general governmental fund, the proprietary fund, and a fiduciary fund. All right. Under each category, actually, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Amanda, who will go into more detail about these different funds. Go ahead, Amanda. Sorry about that.
So within each category,
You have to talk a little louder.
there we go. Okay. So within each category of funds, there are underlying funds that are used to account for resources that are for different purposes. The first category, governmental funds, includes the general fund, which is going to be the focus of our presentation this evening. And the general fund is what's used to account for the day-to-day operations of the village. Additionally, there are what are known as special revenue funds. These are specific funds for specific purposes. This includes the motor fuel tax and TIF money. The final governmental fund is debt service funds, where the village's debt obligations are accounted for, which is primarily the public bond debt. The final two categories of funds, which we will not be covering today, are proprietary funds, which account for transactions that are more business in nature, operations that should be funded by customer payments. That's the water fund, the sewer fund, and the fitness center. And the final are fiduciary funds, which are held for non-governmental parties, and that is the village's pension trust fund.
So let's jump into the specifics. Many of you know that the village's fiscal year runs from May 1 to April 30th. So it's those 12 months, but they span 2 years. Certain financial disclosures are mandated under state law that the village reports to the comptroller of the state each fiscal year. Two documents that we're going to talk specifically about are the annual financial report, and you see the citation there. It's a state law, and the audited financial statements. The village has not And let me repeat that. The village has not complied with these statutory requirements since fiscal year 2021. There's no annual financial report available after 2021 and no audited financial statements after 2021. So what that means is the information that we're providing you has not been thoroughly audited by a CPA, but we do have information coming from an entity that essentially serves as the finance department of the village. Historically, from what we can tell, the village has had small or no full-time financial staff. At various times, even though statutorily there's a provision for a city treasurer, none exists and hasn't for some time. There's a provision for a finance director. There's been intermittent people that have served that role, but that role has been vacant as of May of this year. And before that, the person who held the role started working part-time as of the end of December in 2023. So as you can see, given the lean or no financial staff, there's a lot of dependence upon the John Kasparic accounting firm, which has functionally operated as the village's finance department for some time. What we have examined are monthly financial reports from January of 2021 to May of 2024, produced by the Kasparic firm. And as I mentioned, due to the village's failure to conduct an audited financial statement, we have to caveat the accuracy of the information, but we feel fairly confident based upon lining out not only the monthly reports, but looking at bank statements that match up with the information that's in the financial reports. And we've had the opportunity to talk to some of the folks at the Kasparic firm who are responsible for managing the finances of the village, and that work is ongoing. As of May 30th of this year, the village's general fund was in a net deficit position, meaning that there is insufficient funds in that general fund. As we mentioned, the general fund is used to account for the majority of the village's day-to-day operations, including payroll and vendor payments. The village's special revenue fund and debt service fund, however, are in a positive position, but each of those funds are restricted funds, meaning you cannot borrow from one to give to the other. And that is what's causing, in part, the financial crisis. What's next you can see is a graphic that depicts where we started as of April, where the village started as of April of 22, with positive of $5.6 million in the general fund, and where we are as of May of 2024, which is a negative $3.65 million.
All right, turning now to the increasing expenditures of the village. Over the last 3 fiscal years, the average monthly expenditures of the village have increased by nearly 30%. As you can see in the graphic, in fiscal year 2022, on average, the village spent about $1.9 million a month, but in the last fiscal year, that amount had climbed to $2.5 million. These increasing expenditures have not been accompanied by corresponding increases in revenue. Again, as you see in the graph on the blue bars, the revenues have remained relatively the same over that time period, just over $24 million, while expenditures have climbed from $23 million in 2022 to $30 million in 2024. Ultimately, in fiscal years 2023 and 2024, expenditures exceeded revenue. Specifically in 2024, it was over $5 million more in expenditures than revenues. To look further at the increasing expenditures, the table on the screen highlights the 2 village departments that are the main drivers of this spending increase: the General Administration and Administrative Compensation Department and the Police Department. Turning first to the General Administration Department, Turning first to the general administration line, the increase in expenditures here has grown about approximately 47% This was around $6.4 million in fiscal year 2022, and it was $9.4 million in fiscal year 2024. There have been increases in general administration spending in nearly every area, but there are a handful that stick out the most. As you can see on the first line, the largest driver of this increase is a more than double change in liability insurance cost. It's gone from $1.2 million in fiscal year 2022 to $3.2 million in fiscal year 2024. Other areas where we see large increases are miscellaneous expenditures, settlements, legal fees, and telephone.
Let me just add regarding the legal fees. These are, everything that we're representing to you tonight are things that have been booked in one of the general ledgers or otherwise. We know that the legal fees that have been booked so far are underestimated because there are a number of legal fees that have yet to be paid. And obviously, with the litigation that's been filed, particularly by vendors who have not been paid, those legal fees will definitely, this is a very conservative estimate of what those fees actually are. Let me drill a little bit down also in what we're seeing so far with the police department. Those expenditures have increased approximately 21% since FY22. Some of that is obviously driven by the union contracts and making sure that there's retro pay and that the police officers are compensated according to the collective bargaining agreement. Within the police department expenditures, categories with large increases include overtime, other miscellaneous expenses, and I will tell you we don't know exactly what that is, but we're working on unpacking that, contractual services, other professional services, and medical insurance. We wanted to highlight for you, particularly given overtime, what we saw as two outliers in officers, Officer Terry Young and Officer William Reed. Both of these individuals in the last 2 years have earned more in overtime than their base compensation. And you can see these numbers here. Officer Terry Young in FY 2023 earned $194,290 total, given the base salary and the overtime. And then in FY 2024, that increased to $227,351, combining the base salary and the overtime. Officer Reed for FY 2023 had a total earnings of $145,450, and in FY 2024, $192,732. We thought it also important for you to know that Acting Chief Lacey has accumulated overtime. It's our understanding that he is not part of the collective bargaining unit and has not been for some time, which under normal circumstances would mean that he is not entitled to overtime. But as you can see here, for FY22, FY23, and FY24, and we're now in fiscal year 2025, through those 4 years, he has accumulated $215,747,000 just in overtime. Now we're going to move, ladies and gentlemen, to unfunded expenditures. And this is really focused on, as we alluded to, we're going to move to unfunded expenditures, and this is really focused on checks that have been approved by the board from warrant lists that have come before the Board of Trustees, but held and not sent to the vendors. Based on the records that we have reviewed since March of 2023, the village has been unable to pay all of its monthly expenditures with available cash balance. Since that time, nearly every month, a portion of the checks approved and printed have been held by the village due to unavailability of funds. Per records from the John Kasperick firm, as of June 18, 2024, there are 589 checks totaling over $6 million that have been approved, printed, but not transmitted to vendors. And that is a big driver of the deficit in the general fund. This over $6 million in held checks, I want to caution, does not account for additional monies potentially owed by the village to vendors for which checks have not even been printed. These categories which we are looking into include, for example, invoices that have been received by village departments, but for one reason or another may not have been entered into the accounting system, which is called My Viewpoint. These invoices could have been entered into the accounting system, but not been approved by department heads or by the village administrator. And this could also include invoices that have not been approved by payment for the Board of Trustees. You're aware that from time to time, the warrant lists are presented. The trustees say, pay this, not pay that. Well, those checks that are on the warrant list roll over from time to time. And it probably makes sense just to explain really briefly. There is not a centralized repository for vendors to put their checks in electronically, or their invoices, I should say, so that it's automatically in the system. It has to be either hand-delivered or sent via email. It goes to the appropriate department head. Then it's up to that department head to approve and enter those invoices into the MyPoint system. And it depends upon the dollar amount of the invoice, who has final approval for those invoices to make it onto the warrant list. But that's the way the process works now. It will not surprise you that one of the recommendations that we will have when we finish our work is that the village invest in an automated system so that nothing falls between the cracks. The vendor will be able to see real time, where is my invoice moving through the system, and you'll know where it sits, either with the department head or otherwise.
All right, we'll turn now to discuss the cash status of the village. So the village has 22 different bank accounts. A majority of those bank accounts are designated for the special revenue funds or bond escrow funds. So the money in those bank accounts is restricted and shouldn't be used for day-to-day operations. I'll also note that these 22 accounts don't include the pension assets. The pension assets are held in separate trust accounts. Most of the village's expenditures each month are paid from one main operating bank account. As of June 30th, 2024, that bank account had a balance of $715,000. As of April 30th, 2021, that account had a balance of almost $1.5 million. So a decrease of over $750,000. In addition to the main operating account, historically, the village has held its excess cash in an account known as Illinois funds. Illinois funds are interest-bearing accounts that are managed by the Illinois Treasurer's Office that allow municipalities to earn interest on their excess cash balance. The balance in the Illinois funds account as of June 30th was only $3,900. As of April 30th, 2021, that balance was over $2 million. So the balance of excess cash has dropped by over $2 million in that time period. The monthly financial reports include a summary of the unrestricted cash balances of the village each month. Within these summaries, the balance reflected already accounts for those held checks that Mayor Lightfoot was just discussing, checks that have been issued but haven't cleared because they haven't been sent yet to vendors. What you can see on the chart is that the unrestricted cash balance of the general fund has dropped from almost $5 million as of April of 2022, and it is now, accounting for all of the checks that have yet to be sent, is now in a deficit position of over $5.5 million as of May of 2024.
We thought it was important to give you a little bit of insight into credit card use by village employees. We do not have complete information yet. It is our hope that we will get further cooperation and be able to have a complete picture of credit cards, but we wanted to share with you what we do know so far. We are aware that over this time period, from 2021 to the present, the village used 6 different credit cards at various points, from January 2021 through May of this year. 4 American Express cards that appear to have been used by various folks within the police department. The statements for these accounts were addressed to Ernest Mobley, Robert Collins, and Louis Lacey.
Mayor, may I interject there for a moment? Because we have, it was former Deputy Chief Mobley is present with us, and an amazing officer, so I'm certain there was no misuse or misconduct on that behalf, so I want to make sure I state that because he has been an exemplary officer. Yeah,
all we know is what we've seen in the paper so far. We have not interviewed any of these folks to get a better understanding of the specifics around credit card use. We have some knowledge of that, but we'll share that as part of the final report. There's 1 American Express card for which statements are addressed to Keith Freeman, the village administrator, and there was 1 Fifth Third card which statements are addressed to the village. We've been told that that card is no longer in use. We understand from the records we've received from the Kasperick company and interviews that we've conducted that receipts for credit card purchases are rarely provided. Further, we understand that the credit card balance, because it comes due, of course, every month, we all know that, is paid as a matter of course, and it is reflected in the accounting records as miscellaneous police department expenditures. We're looking into what is the reason and rationale for that, but what this means is that these credit card bills that are paid do not appear on warrant lists and are therefore not presented to the board for approval. Again, that will be a recommendation that we make, and the board is obviously aware of this issue, which is in part why they took the action that they took the other day to rein in the credit card spending. We also understand from the Kasperick company that the only time a credit card charge would be reflected on a warrant list is if a receipt is provided, and as I've said, our information is that the receipts are rarely provided. We want to highlight a couple of credit card purchases. You're having the same reaction that we did when we saw this. So in particular, we were very concerned to see the top 3 purchases that were highlighted for you that were booked on January 5th of 2023. That's roughly $40,000, a little more than that, in credit card purchases on Amazon in the same day. And our understanding is that the village does not have an Amazon account. These are somebody using one of the credit cards and charging these amounts using your tax dollars. We suspect we're going to see, as you can see, expenditures at Target, Walgreens, Best Buy, a number of charges that raise questions in our mind. Are these legitimate purchases using the credit cards? Well, we've also found in the credit cards, I know that there's been a lot of interest in travel, and we are highlighting here on this slide some of the travel that is reflected in the village credit cards. Birmingham, Alabama, and Montgomery, Alabama in March of 2023 with 5 known travelers. Washington, D.C. in 2023 with 4 known travelers. Las Vegas, Nevada with 8 known travelers. Jackson, Mississippi in June of 2023 with 3 known travelers. Austin, Texas in July of 2023 with 3 known travelers. Portland, Oregon in July of 2023 with 4 travelers. Central and Southern Illinois in September of 2023. I think you're aware of what happened during that time. 10 hotel rooms booked during that travel. Travel to New York City in October of 2023, 1 traveler. Atlanta, Georgia in November of 2023, 1 traveler on the Village's credit cards. And I caveat that because we will and are continuing to look at, I'll say, cross-pollination between the Village and the township and the credit card use there as well. So let me summarize for you kind of what we presented, what we found so far regarding the finances. The general fund is used to pay the vast majority of the Village's expenses, as you heard. As of May 31st of this year, the fund had a negative balance of $3.65 million. The Village's general fund expenditures have exceeded revenues the past 2 fiscal years, ending April 30th, 2023 and April 30th, 2024. As of June 30th of this year, the cash on hand in unrestricted accounts is insufficient to cover the held checks valuing $6.1 million. We are in the current fiscal year of FY 2025, and the Village has no budget that's been passed this year. The Village's financial records have not been audited since FY 2021, and the Village has not filed the mandated state annual reports since FY 2021. So where are we in terms of next steps? Regarding the financial information, there's a lot more work that we need to do, as I indicated. We've just recently got a lot of information in the door that is reflected for the most part in this presentation, but there are other things that we have asked for, and we're hoping that we're going to get further cooperation from the Kasperic accounting firm. Additional details regarding credit card spending and any receipts that might exist. Detailed accounting records and reconciliations, check registers, which is important. Detailed accounting of inter-fund transfers and balances. What we're seeing, and we need to really look at the detail here, is that there is a transfer from one fund, in some instances there's restricted funds, into another fund, and vice versa. Additional detail, we're looking at what are the financial policies and practices in place, and whether or not those need to be changed, updated, or beefed up in any way. We are continuing to look at what happened in Las Vegas. There are 2 trips, one in May of 2022 and a second in May of 2023. And as I alluded to earlier, the relationship and the intermingling of funds and personnel with Thornton Township is something we're very focused on as well.
The audacity of her to always deflect and point the fingers at the trustees in every board meeting, accusing them of being the reason that the Village of Dalton is broke. Did y'all see the credit card purchases from Wayfair, Best Buy, Target, with the biggest purchase being spent in one day of over $44,000 from Amazon? And the Village doesn't even have an Amazon account. That is absolutely absurd. Now let's talk about Chief Lewis Lacey. It was mentioned that over $400,000 in overtime was approved for him and 2 of his officers. Lacey received $215,000 in overtime over the last 3 years, and according to his contract per Lori Lightfoot, he is not entitled to receive overtime, which is the reason why the trustees voted this week to place him on administrative leave due to him violating the budget. But it has been reported that he is still reporting to work. Now, all of this reckless spending, lawsuits, fine dining, expensive trips, and her extravagant lifestyle is all on the taxpayer's dime. And it's going to take the village of Dalton years to recover from Tiffany Teflon Tahoe Henyard. Let me know your thoughts on this story in the comment section below. And before you leave, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, Crime Mob, stay safe out there and always watch your surroundings. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.